Hi, I can see we've got a few people here this afternoon, and welcome to the very last, I think, at this stage, the very last live question webinar on the first aid introduction to first aid homeopathic prescribing. I've been doing these now for 2 weeks. I'm happy to come on again if there's a ton more people that want to do that, but I'm going to probably record this one and then send this out as a replay. So let me know if you have any questions today, because I will be asking for them at the end of the session. And very shortly, I can see there's a few people here. So hi, and thanks for joining. It's very exciting. It's good to see you all. And I know some of you have tried to get on in the past, and it's been a bit difficult with timing and all of that. So that's why I've kept doing them every day or every couple of days. And then we had a gap in between. So just quickly, you will see some offers come up. I've set them to come up gradually, but they do probably just flip in because I'm getting used to this system. And there's a private Facebook group you can join. So if there's any more questions from today, you can go there. I'll be doing more webinars on first aid in natural medicine, using natural medicine's first aid, especially for your immune system. And this includes supplements and herbs and what you should have in your little treasure chest. It's very hard to prescribe on a broad spectrum for people, but just the basics of what you need. And also homeopathic first aid kits. The next series of webinars will be presenting maybe 1 or 2 seminars that I'm asking a small fee for, just to help with the time and value the energy that we put into these things. But we'll be going through all the homeopathic medicines and what to use for when. So I'm going to set up the webinar now just to let you watch something I have pre-recorded. Bear with me for 2 minutes while I get this going and set that up so you can't see me, you can just see the webinar. And I will mute me so you don't hear me typing away answering your questions in the background, but feel free to ask anything.
Time to share some information and give anyone who needs it the most
tools they can to keep themselves and family healthy. I decided after seeing many posts to provide some information about homeopathy in first aid. And we know that there's a lot of confusion around what sort of medicines are appropriate for different things at the moment, and there's a lot of questions being asked, and it's really time for the people that have learnt and got the experience and can heal in different methods to be able to share that information. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to do this, because I've had so many years of integrated nutritional, naturopathic, genetic, and homeopathic and energetic medicine knowledge that I've got so much to offer those that need it most now. So I decided to share or to present homeopathic first aid. It's been on my radar for a little while. I did a couple of courses, workshops in this when I first started in naturopathy, and had an innate understanding of homeopathy because of some of the experience I had. My quick story is that I started as a naturopath I started in 1998 or 99 out of dental health education, and I went in and I found myself conveniently settling in Geelong, right around the corner from a home that I'd looked at to buy that was right next to a homeopathic practice. And I really, it was intriguing to me that this home, beautiful home, was made into a homeopathic centre of excellence. And I ended up getting a job there after I studied and got into naturopathy. And I was the chief dispensing, administration clerk, receptionist, educator, all sorts of things in that practice, and I learned a lot. So 2 very classical homeopaths were instigating the business, and both are now, I'm pretty sure, still working as homeopaths. One's a naturopath, nutritionist, homeopath, very, very spiritually aware, and the other is a very classical homeopath, and also studied alongside Tom Bowen, or was trained by Tom Bowen in the original Bowen therapy. So
I found myself in this practice and I learned so much, because every day I would be dispensing homeopathic medicines to clients coming through the door. And so many people get confused when prescribing homeopathics because they're not trained in homeopathy. There are different types of homeopathy. First, we have our classical homeopathy, which is constitutional. So it takes in terms of, we call it the rubrics. The rubrics are the description of the symptoms and signs and issues with the person. And so a classical homeopath will take in that information very thoroughly, and it's amazing to unpeel and unravel someone's rubrics from the mindset down, right down into the gut health, to the big toe on the left foot, you know. So a rubric is really important. So one of the things that we'll go through in the next half hour is just Homeopathy First Aid Prescribing 101. In this session, I'm not going to get the time to go through every single medicine, but I will be doing this in a phase 2, so three different phases of education for you, so you can get the most out of it, because you really do need to understand the basics of homeopathy before you venture into prescribing. And just to be fair, I better put a disclaimer in there. Homeopathy is one form of medicine, and any of the information you get now is well and truly not going to be taken as sole therapeutics for anyone or any person. And I implore you to seek medical advice if you have any issues that aren't comfortably being able to be maintained in your family or anyone you're prescribing to. But in saying that, first aid homeopathic medicine really can't actually cause any major concerns if you take in the general rules. And one is, you always treat the person, not the disease. Number one rule, always treat the person, not the disease. Write that down. Because we are looking at the person in whole, in their totality. How are they presenting? Are they fevery? Are they cold? Are they clammy? Are they quiet? Are they loud? Are they angry? Are they irritable? Are they crying over nothing? Are they, over trifles, we call that. And so you're always treating the person in homeopathy, not the disease, just as naturopathy does as well. So the next thing we need to understand is the level of, or the different medicines. So homeopathic medicines are very safe. They're non-toxic. They can't possibly be toxic unless you're using an original tincture of a toxic substance like petrol, as a crazy example. But they can't possibly be toxic, because what happens with homeopathic medicines, when they're made, you purchase the pilules, which are at the end of the production line. And part of the reason with homeopathic medicines being so misunderstood in mainstream medicine is because they're so diluted down into something that's infinitesimal. There's no way that science in its current form, the mainstream science, not the energetic or bioresonance energetic form of medicine, that can do all sorts of things, but we still don't have the capacity to measure diluted substances down to their vibrational level. And that's what homeopathics are. So when we're looking at homeopathic medicines, they come in lots of different styles. They can come in pilules, which are little tiny pilules. I don't know if you can see that clearly or not in there. I'll open one quickly and show you. can you see that? Little pilules, little round pilules that when you match the remedy to the person or some of the symptoms in first aid prescribing, we are probably in first aid prescribing prescribing for symptoms, but we're still looking at the total picture of the person. So these little pilules, this is sepia 200C. These little pilules are usually placebo pills that have had a liquid from the tincture or the original formula dropped onto them, like so. These are drops, homeopathic drops, some of my other favourite homeopathic medicines. And one drop on a full container of placebo pills makes up one medicine. So this is sepia, as I said, 200C. Awesome medicine for women with menstrual heaviness and other things amongst many. And so you can get those medicines in pilules or drops. I generally prefer the pilules because they're easier to make and then make more of when we need them. And they come in little containers or they come in bigger containers. And you guys have probably already purchased first aid kits that are already pre-made with instructions, and that's excellent. The other forms of homeopathic medicines we can get are tissue salts. You've probably all heard of those. Formulas of complexes, which means there's not just one single medicine like the sepia. There is 4 or 5 different homeopathic formulas in a formula to make something that helps with. This one particularly is for menstrual cramps, muscular spasms and cramps, made specifically by Brower and an offset company of those called Heal, which is a very amazing company that's been around for many years. I'm not sure how they're going now. I know there's lots of troubles out there in naturopathic land. And then the other ones that I love are isopathic medicines. So not particularly homeopathic, but they have homeopathic dilutions of bacteria and viruses, and very important right now. So they're the different things you can get. You've probably heard of tissue salts. These are another form, tissue salts, and they are a homeopathic. These are actually more nutritional, but at very small levels. So that's that information, the different types you can get. So often we find with first aid homeopathics that it's best to have homeopathics with children. Sometimes in drops are easier, like this one here. You can just pop them under the tongue. They do have a little bit of ethanol or alcohol that preserves the medicine because they're drops and because you're exposing them to oxygen. You don't really want someone's bacteria getting on that and then going back into the bottle. With the placebo pills that have been dipped with 1 or 2 drops of the tincture at the right dilution, they're just, you put one, what's this one? I can probably take that right now. Yeah, no, I shouldn't. Just thinking about my system at the moment. I'll take something else just to show you how they work. Nope, don't want that one either. Hepasol, Euphrasia, don't really need that one right now. Nope, don't need that. So I'm not going to take any because the ones that I would normally take aren't here. But if I was going to, I'd just put one in the lid and then I'd pop it under my tongue. Like pop it in the lid so I'm not touching it, one at a time. And with children, I just tell them that or my child, I just say, open it up, lift the tongue up, pop it under, and then put the container tightly back, lid back on tightly. So that's forms of homeopathic medicine. The next stage of this will be dosages and how homeopathic medicines are dosed. And so one really important thing to write down here, hopefully you've got a pen and paper with you, is that the more diluted the original homeopathic medicine is, the stronger it is in the mental symptoms or the mind symptoms. The smaller the dilution, the smaller the dilution, the stronger they are for acute symptoms that are presenting now. So, for example, most homeopathic medicines come with a number on them. So, for example, we'll call calc fluor, okay, calcium fluoride. If you had a 30C, let's go back. If you had a 5X of that, an X stands for 10th. So you'd have a very strong form of calc fluor. And you might use that with someone that's struggling to mend bones. Calc fluor is very essential for bone strength. So an X equals 1 in 10 dilution. If you have a 5X, you have a 5 in 10 dilution. So it's even smaller than a 1X. 1X is bigger, 5X is smaller. And then you go to C, which is centesimal. So you have a 1 in 100 dilution for a 30C. But if you have a 200C, you're obviously going to be diluting that medicine down further and further and further. So there's much less symptomatic relief. It's more mind, body, constitutional relief. And most of you won't have first aid prescribing kits, which I don't never give anyone them for first aid prescribing, over a 30C. It would be a bit silly to have that because you can actually bring about or prove, it's called prove, the problem that you started with. So most of you will have either X's or C's. So when you're prescribing homeopathic medicines to someone, a child, for example, or yourself, you will make sure that your dose is relevant to the symptoms and that the frequency of dosing it is also relevant to the symptoms. So that brings us to the next level of discussion, the frequency of homeopathic medicines. How often do you give them? So if you had someone with a headache, that was the rubrics of that, the symptoms of that would be throbbing, sharp pain, as if it's pounding, like they might describe their headache as going like this, and it came on suddenly, and they were red and hot, and it was throbbing. Then you would potentially give them belladonna, if that's in your first aid kit, where it should be. And if you gave them one single dose of the 30C, and within half an hour symptoms were still there, you'd give them another dose. And if after an hour it was still there, you'd give another dose. So what you're doing is you're providing a more frequent pattern of that particular medicine that suits that particular rubric, the throbbing, headache that's hot, red sort of feeling. Does that make sense? Because this is recorded, I'll reserve the questions till the end when I'll come in and answer. But that's basically what happens with the frequency of prescribing. So you're not just giving them one pill and walking away, or for example, these drops, GT drops, are brilliant for constipation, especially in children and in mums. They've got a complex of different things, and you'd potentially give the child under 5-6 years old, you give them 2 drops every half hour until a movement came, but a maximum of 6 doses. And for a medicine, like I was saying, for belladonna, which was the headache, you'd probably give them 1 pill, or if you had any drops, 1 drops of 30C every half to an hour for maybe up to 6 doses. If it wasn't going to work after that, you'd need to look at other things. And I would anyway. I would be looking at other things like, why are they getting a headache? Have they got a crook neck? Have they got a fever with that? Do their glands feel swollen? And you prescribe for those things as well. And in any of these cases, I'm always available to help with acute prescribing. All you need to do is SMS me, and I can set up a quick, short, acute consult with you, which very minimal price. If you've got your kit home, just let me help if that's what you need. Because sometimes it is confusing as a mum. I know I've had to call others when my son's been unwell. I know what I'm doing, but because it's your own, it's a bit tricky because you're so emotionally connected, and it's really hard. We don't want to see our beautiful little ones struggling with pain. So we've gone through, we'll just summarize here, we've gone through the different types of homeopathic medicines. We've gone through dilutions and how the dilution works. And we've gone through that we always prescribe to the totality of the symptoms. I didn't actually say that, but totality of the symptoms, and for the person, not the symptoms, unless we're doing acute prescribing, which is basically what we're doing here. Oh, the other ones that came too are squirts. You can get some homeopaths make up first aid in squirts. This one is Somniplex. I used that for some people when they weren't able to sleep, and I actually make medicines up from those, because homeopathic medicine, one of the reasons I think it has become so attacked in mainstream is because you can actually make a homeopathic medicine from a single mother tincture over and over and over again, so long as you've got that single mother tincture, which means that there's not much money to be made in these things, and mainstream is having difficulty with that because they like to make a fair bit of money. Okay, so the next part of this will be talking about the different medicines, just very briefly, because there's so many different ones in first aid kits. I will pop my glasses on for this because I'm using one of my gurus, Boriki, which is a repertory that I studied through, and I've always come back to. There's so many others. Oh, there's so many different types of repertories and materia medicas. So a materia medica is an old-fashioned book with usually published in India or somewhere like that, where homeopathics are used in mainstream hospitals. Amazing. And so when you're looking at a materia medica, which you probably won't have unless you can grab hold of one, and you're looking at first of all, the name of the medicine. So this one is Arsenic Album, or Ars Alb. Ars Alb is a very profound remedy that acts on every organ and every tissue. Think of arsenic. So arsenic trioxide is actually Arsenic Album. And if you used, a tablespoon of Ars Alb in its raw form, you'd be dead, because it causes all of the body parts to become very weak. It causes internal bleeding, etc., etc. So it's really not a nice thing it's actually poisonous. So when you're using as homeopathic medicine, a 30C of Ars Alb, or possibly a 1 millesimal, which is a fine dilution, very tiny amount, you'd be looking at treating the mind in those sorts of doses or dilutions. But what we're talking about is something that works on the system when it's really prostrated. So when we're reading a materia medica, or you've got your repertory that's come with your first aid kits, if no one has a first aid, or if you want a first aid kit, let me know and I'll make sure I get you the right one, or I'll make them up specifically from the medicines that I use and see used most in my clinic with mums and dads, kids. So when you're looking at these, you're looking at, does the symptom picture become quite profound when you read it? And the more things that point towards that particular medicine, big tick of approval. So you wouldn't, for example, with Arsenic Album, where they have great exhaustion even after the slightest exertion, you wouldn't use Ars Alb for someone who is jumping off the roof because they're so excited about something, but they're getting really hot and clammy and sticky. But you'd use Ars Alb where there was great prostration, lots of exhaustion. Oh, woe is me, I can't get out of bed. I feel better if I'm by the seaside, and I've got lots of fear and worry over why I'm so sick or not feeling so well. Its major effect is that it actually breaks down the blood, and it causes lots of heat. So, I mean, that's in its worst form, but there's lots of other rubrics that work well with Ars Alb. It's probably not the best one to start with because it's quite morbid when you look at this. So when they first started homeopathy, when Hahnemann was first investigating, and some of the great homeopaths of our era, or of our existence, what they would do is they would use medicines on healthy subjects Oh, funny that, isn't it? That we're doing this again, but we're actually testing in the public with things that aren't so healthy. So when we're going through homeopathic medicine proving, back in those days when they were being understood, they would give us our in a 30C or even a smaller dilution, maybe a 10X or something like that, which was more, probably not toxic, but more like the original. And they would give that dose until it brought about in a healthy subject the symptom picture. And then every single symptom picture was written down in a materia medica. And all different authors of homeopathics have different sorts of ways of writing rubrics, and so they do get a bit tricky. Some other medicines in my first aid kit include Arnica, just briefly, bruising, swelling, muscle pains, that sort of thing, strain of muscle pain, sometimes in bone healing and in bruising, easy bruising. If someone's broken their leg or something like that and they're not healing, they're getting swollen and red and sore and the muscles are just, really crampy. Leadum, which is really good for needle stick and or sharp pointing objects that go in, like bee stings and things like that. Belladonna we talked about before. I use Ars alba a fair bit. Phosphorus is a great medicine for burning, for heat, for fever. Really good at first sign of fever. Natphos, similar, but Natphos is a little bit different. It's sodium phosphate, so the cells work a bit differently with that. Chamomilla, you might have heard of chamomilla in Walida. They use a chamomilla toothpaste or chamomilla medicines for children with teething injury and issues, for pain of teething. Pulsatilla, beautiful medicine. I love it. We explain pulsatilla as a weathercock of all medicines. So a pulsatilla constitutional type can be fair 1 minute and then bawling and crying the next, and mad and angry and then happy. So a bit like Melbourne's weather, the weathercock of all medicines. Sepia I use a fair bit of with women who have deep feelings of all gone down there when they're having their period or menstrual cycle, and they just feel like they're just going to lose everything through their vagina or their reproductive area. What else do I use a lot of? I use lachesis, which is snake venom. Lachesis is great for sharp stabbing left-sided headaches. We have Grindella, which we use for coughs and symptoms of catarrh or mucus. Catarrh and mucus is another thing we look for too, by the way. Lots of different symptom pictures. So I think in terms of understanding how things work, Nux vomica as well, and Magphos, two other really great first aid medicines that you may or may not have. There's quite a few others. I use different forms for different things, and sometimes the symptom picture comes up really clearly. Other times you have to do a little bit of asking and thinking. But again, as I said, I'm always available to help if you need extra help with that. And also the different forms of homeopathic medicines. I don't believe that one form of homeopathic medicine and one first aid kit is right for everyone. I also think that there's other things we should have in our first aid natural medicine kit, especially in these times. And so I like to send out a kit full of those, full of homeopathics, nutritional, and some acute herbal medicines to help when we have infections and fevers and flu-like symptoms and viruses and gut health issues. So I think that's about it. I'm going to upload this now. If there's any questions, I'll come in and on the webinar at the end, and we can answer any specific questions for the next 5-10 minutes. If anyone wants to connect with me outside of here and go through their personal medicine chest, I'm just going to offer that at a very minimal price, just to help with time and value my time in energetic exchange. And if you'd like any kits made up too, I can certainly help you with that. So thank you for listening. I've rambled on a fair bit. I'm really happy to be able to have presented this to you, and I'll close the floor for any questions.
Hi. Hi. So we lost one person, but I've been chatting offline to her. Let me know if there's any questions. Thank you so much for attending. And anyone who's watching the replay back, honestly, there's much more coming. So I'm very excited about sharing some of the future webinars. The next one will be individual medicine prescribing. So I'll probably go through it, as I said in that webinar, about 20 also first aid homeopathic medicines. And then the next webinar series from that will be on preparing your home natural medicine kit. So you've got everything there and basic ingredients and contraindications with certain medicines, naturopathic medicines, that is. So yeah, I'm really pleased. I'll just see if there is any questions. Often people have to think about things and then get back to me, and that's all good too, because it's a big thing. So lots of information. And just remember, when you're prescribing homeopathic first aid, if you have a kit at home, look at the totality of the symptoms, match them with the medicine. The best match is the best medicine. You can't overdose on homeopathic medicines unless that person is really, really, really sensitive, but that's very unusual. Homeopathic medicines are non-toxic. We have toxic substances that are very, 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 very diluted, as we just explained in the webinar. And so you're prescribing for the totality of the symptoms. The dose is important. The lower the dose, so if it's an X, thanks, Jane. If it's a 30C, you're probably looking at something in a homeopathic first aid kit. If it's an X, it's more acute, like a stub toe or something like that. And then going up to the higher mindset prescribing, which is pretty amazing when you feel it resonating with your body, in the M's, so millesimal. And then you're looking at the frequency of dosing. So you wouldn't frequently dose a millesimal constitutional medicine. You would maybe give it once or twice a week at the most, maybe even once every couple of weeks, depending on the person. But that's pretty specific prescribing. You won't be covering that in this seminar. The frequency of prescribing is really important with homeopathic first aid. So you do a dose one dose every half hour for up to 6 doses. If you weren't getting an improvement, look at the totality of symptoms again, and obviously seek medical advice if there's a massive fever that's really scary, but you can often bring fevers down using homeopathics prescribed properly, and phosphorus is one of the great burners, but we'll go through that next time. So if you want to join me again, just let me know. I will be posting on my Facebook Michelle Crone Naturopathy site, and anyone who's shared an email with me, I'll send you a link in that. And things are going to get very exciting in this area in the next few months. So stay tuned, and thanks for coming on today.